en trappa ut. Och den heter Kvinnors rättigheter och politisk islam. Vi hoppas att alltså Azar idag i sitt tal också får peka det här. Och det här är ett stort problem i Mellanöstern. Och politisk islam, alltså det är i samband med det här makthavarna, så det har ju skapat en situation för kvinnor som är absolut alltså ohållbar. Jag ska inte prata med Azar också har jobbat som journalist, alltså sänder tv-program. Vi har ett tv-program på persiska, men det sänds över satellit alltså mot de här persisktalande länder. Och Azar har haft några program också på engelska, som då vi hade en tv som sänder över Europa också. Men nu på grund av pengar är det ju bara persiskt program som är. Varsågod Azar, varsågod. Tack.
Well, when I heard there is a conference or there's a week called For a Better World, I was really both surprised and very happy, because we also, I mean, I'm the head of organization for women's liberation in Iran, but I'm also part of a political movement, worker communism in Iran and also in Iraq, and our program is called For a Better World. So it just, this sort of similar kind of concept coming to us, like about 16 years ago when we adopted this program, and now the concept of a global movement in the West, at least. For a better world, I thought, well, we are coming very close to each other, as we need a better world. A better world in all sorts of, spheres. We need a better world, meaning a more free world, a freer world, a better world in the concept of a more egalitarian world, that there is more equality. Not only equality between the genders or sexes, but equality among people in general. We need a better world in a sense that there is more justice. I don't know how much news you watch. I at least try to sort of catch up with the news once a day. And I get the international media, like CNN, BBC. And recently, I'm watching Al Jazeera English. And I watch it like 9 o'clock in the morning until 10. And then for a couple of hours, I just can't do anything. And I just say, no, I shouldn't watch the news anymore. Because all you see in the news, and they don't even show you all of it, it's about misery, hunger, killing, murder, bombing. And it's become such an everyday event that sometimes you don't even feel it anymore. As though you can't do anything about it. Now, what happened in Kenya? I'm sure you all heard. One demonstration and protest against rigged election. See what happened? Ethnic cleansing, ethnic war, and you just thought, just a demonstration against an election could come to what? Maybe Kenya would turn to another Sudan, another Somalia. And then you see, what is this world is coming to? I know I'm supposed to talk about women's liberation and women's equality, but there's just some way you cannot separate these two. You cannot have an island of women being happy, carefree, equal, and the world is just a mass murder situation. A serial killer killing everybody. It just could happen maybe in Hollywood, but not in real world. And then when you look at it, they're very much related. They're very much related, what we're fighting for. See, I have been fighting for women's equality ever since I was, maybe fighting for a 12-year-old is not the right word, but I was thinking about it. I was protesting against it, at least in my immediate environment, for women's rights and for equality and for a just world. And for the, and ever since I was a university student, I've been fighting for it. And ever since the Iranian Revolution in 1979, now you can guess my age, since 1979, we've been fighting for a better society, a better world, a more equal society, and a society that women are equal. And see what we've got? Political Islam. The worst kind of misogynism, the worst kind of sexist society, the worst kind of ideology against women that you could find in the world now is political Islam, and we got it. And so when you look at this, you see how actually what we're doing is all connected to each other. We are fighting, as Organization for Women's Liberation now I'm talking, for women's equality, for women's freedom, and then automatically we have to fight against political Islam, because political Islam in that part of the world is the biggest enemy of women. In the whole world under Islam, I do not like to call them Muslim countries, because I don't believe in that concept of identifying a country or a society by the religion. This is very arbitrary with a political intention. I call them the world under Islam, the whole Middle East and North Africa. There, now, at least for the past 10 years, especially since September 11th, it's got worse. The worst enemy for women is political Islam. So if I'm fighting for women's equality, I have to fight against political Islam. And if I'm fighting against political Islam, now I'll go back a little bit and look, since September 11th, there's another one I have to fight against, another force which is reinforcing political Islam constantly, and that's America. You know why? Because since the so-called war on terror started after September 11th, everything that part of the West or the whole West under the leadership of the United States have done has helped to reinforce political Islam, has helped to reinforce terrorism, has helped to enforce what people call extremism. So when I look at it, I say, maybe in the 60s, if you were part of the women's movement, you could say, okay, I want more freedom, I want more equality, I don't give a damn about anything else. I don't care whether working class is in a good condition or not, I don't care if the people are happy or there is more justice or not. I just want my equality and I fight for it. But maybe then it was possible. I don't even think then it was possible. But now it's even more impossible. For me, wanting to fight for women's equality in the Middle East and not to care about political Islam, I have to fight political Islam. And when I want to fight political Islam, I see a big force there. With whatever it does, it's reinforcing this. Maybe I could have forgot about America. I say, you see, because I know I just keep changing, because I just want you to bring into the picture that I am. I just want you to bring you into the context that I have to fight. I'm not a sort of a stereotype anti-imperialist talking here to you. No, we have to fight with that. In the 70s, when there was, after the revolution in Iran, or we had this problem with the left. Anytime we talked about women's equality, they said, our main enemy is America. First, we have to get rid of imperialism, then talk about women's rights. This is not what I'm saying. I'm saying for women's rights, I have to fight. You see the difference now? Because what happened? There was this war, they call it war on terror. Actually, how I see it, and this is not my formulation, it's someone else's formulation, someone called Mansur Hikmat, but now I see how true it was. It's not war against terror, it's war of terrorists. You have two poles of terrorism, they're fighting against each other, and what comes out of it is making more and more misery, murder, bloodshed for the people. What the Islamists did in New York, it was awful. It was awful, that tragic event. You know, it wasn't only that, I don't know, 3,000 people got killed, which is a lot. But right now in Iraq, over every day there are 100 people are being killed. It's not so much the amount, which is terrible, it's the way they were killed. The sheer brutality of being able to transfer a passenger plane into a bomb and then kill someone else. It's just, I mean, only a sick mind can think of this kind of project. And this is what Islamists are. And then after that, we had so-called war on terror. What happened? Look at Afghanistan. Look at Iraq. Iraq was under a dictatorship, a brutal dictatorship. Saddam Hussein was a dictator, a brutal dictator that should have been taken down and put into trial. No one doubts that even for 1 minute. But there was a civil society. At least children could go to school. At least women could go to work. People were not tearing each other apart under this bogus identification of Shia, Sunni, and Kurd. But there were fights. There were. It wasn't all beauty. No, it wasn't. But see what happened now? Parents don't dare send their children to school because they're scared. Brother-in-law kills his brother-in-law because one of them happens to be Shia and the other one happens to be Sunni. But they married, internal marriages were okay then. What happened now that they're tearing each other apart? Is it just Iraqi people all of a sudden became so ethnically hating each other? No, it's not. It's what this whole so-called New World Order is doing to those people. Putting people in different boxes of you're Sunni, you're Shia, you're Kurd, you're Arab, you're whatever. And then they're tearing each other apart. And look at what happened in Lebanon last year. And look at what's happening in Gaza now. I don't know if you followed it. You look at it. You look at these pictures of these young children. You know, you always have more passion for children, more compassion for children than you would have for adults, as though adults have chosen to do that. But I mean, children, especially if you have children yourself, you can't really dare watching all these scenes of a girl who needs dialysis and has to go to Egypt for dialysis, cannot go because the border is closed. Of people having no power, of people in the hospital because of no energy are dying, because energy is cut, and as soon as a part of the border is broken down, you see people rushing to the other side to get some kind of fuel, to get cigarettes, to get a motorcycle, to get some clothes. Is that the world has come to? That you can punish 1.5 million people to gradual death because you don't like what the government is? Isn't it enough that they suffer under that particular government because it's Islamic government and we know what Islamic government can do to you? Now you have to make them suffer like that too? This is called the world has come true. And when you see these things, you cannot, I might be being oversighted a lot for people who come for women's question, but I need to do that. You know why? Because Islamists use that. Islamists use that as an ideological facade. They have falsified their ideologies. They have represented themselves as the spokesperson of briefs of people in the Middle East. So you know what you see? What you see is an increased number of young females in the Middle East, in North Africa, also in Islamic communities in the West, who wear the veil. You know why they do that? Because they're making a political statement. They have been faced with choice between two evil forces, I call them. One is what they call American imperialism, which tears you apart, kills you, throws bombs at you and all of that, and humiliates you. And another one is the Islamic, who they say at least is fighting against America. And this makes our fight for women's equality even more difficult. So I do not have to only fight against Islamism, against the laws that govern people's lives. How am I going to fight against stoning? How am I going to fight against all the discriminatory laws governing family laws? How am I going to fight against Islamism as a misogynist, as a sexist, as a male chauvinist, as anti-woman ideology, when I see an increasing number of females, young females in the university taking way? This is happening. On Friday, there was the secularist conference in London. I was giving a speech there, and then there was Ibn Barra. You probably have heard him. He's one of the sort of very famous critics of Islam. He said that a friend of him in Tunisia, I think was either Tunisia or Morocco, one of these two North African countries, I don't remember, but it doesn't really matter. It's just countries under Islam, which used to be more secular, much more secular. For example, Tunisia and especially Tunisia was much more secular than any other countries in North Africa and Middle East. His friend is teaching at the university, and women used to be without the veil, and he says now increasing numbers of young females coming to school with the veil, and he's so worried he doesn't know why this is happening, but I think I know why this is happening. That young generation of women are making a political statement. They're saying we are being torn apart, we are being murdered, we are being discriminated against, we are being humiliated by what they call American imperialism. So, you want to fight Islamism? So I'm going to take the veil. This is the easiest way, the most pragmatic way of choosing when you don't have any other options. So what we have to try, for example, as a women's liberation organization, what we have to try to do is a very difficult task, and we need your help. What we have to do is telling this young generation of women, look, these two are both your enemies. You do not have to choose between these two. You have to fight against both. And we need a third voice. We need a third option. We need a third alternative. And that's why this better world that we call in this whole global movement, it's so encouraging, because I'm sure more or less people who come to these places, they have same tendency. And if we can become more organized, if we can become more united, then we have a choice. Then we can present those people, those females, with another choice. Tell them you do not need to choose between so-called American imperialism or Islamism. You do not need to choose between these two terrorist, reactionary, fascist, whatever you want to call it, movements. You do not. You can choose another option and stand against both of them, which is very difficult. I know it's difficult. But one place in the Middle East is not that difficult, and that's Iran, which is a lot of hope, Iran, I've said it many times that what will happen in Iran, especially regards women's liberation in Iran, would open up a whole new door for the Middle East, especially for women in the Middle East. We do not have in Iran that kind of political statement. The whole secular movement in Iran, women's rights movement in Iran, youth movement, political movement against Islamic, all the social movements we have in Iran, they're very much against Islamism. And they do not get fooled by America either. So, I just want to define it in the most simplistic way. I don't want to get into lots of political or theoretical sort of concepts. Sometimes gets cliche. I just want to say how simple that is. For example, there was this big left student demonstration last month in Iran, and it was a show of force by the left students, and you could see the difference between other, like, around half of those in the demonstration were women. And they were in front of the demonstration, very powerful, fighting against, calling for freedom and equality, and calling for, liberation of freedom for women, calling for more justice. Or, it was very nice to see. Many of them have been arrested, though. Many of them have been arrested. They have been tortured. And unfortunately, one young male in Sanandaj was killed under the torture by the Islamic Republic. These are all, what really brings your heart to sort of, really upset. I mean, especially as a mother, when I look at a 21-year-old boy is being killed under torture, my heart is. But then you see Iran is different. Iran is different. I'm not meaning nationalistically is different, like Iranian people are different people. No, they're not. They've just lived under this Islamic Republic for 30 years almost, and they've gone through a revolution, and there has been whole different kind of left movement in Iran that has come. And we are all the product of that. So it's not because we are any better than any other people, but our experience with the Islamic Republic, our experience with the Islamic movement, and our experience with, left and everything has made us to see what we can see now. So what we can do, I mean, if we can ever, and I'm hoping that that's going to be not too late, sooner probably than later, get rid of Islamic Republic of Iran, that's going to open up a whole new door to women in the Middle East. Because Islamic Republic, everyone knows, I think, plays a very, very important role in the whole Islamic movement, what I call political Islam. I mean, it's a pillar of that movement. It sort of financially supports it, and strategically supports it with sort of arms, and ideologically as well. So it's a very important, because it's one of the important leaders. Like if you see that Bin Laden and Al-Qaeda might be called as another, one section, Islamic Republic is another. And if you can get rid of Islamic Republic and marginalize Islam, you can marginalize Islamic movement. And by doing so, then you can actually have a very important impact on marginalizing the whole Islamic movement in the Middle East and free the societies of Islamism and free the society, women especially. So that's why I had to go through all this, take you through all that journey to show you how I think all of these are related, and how we here, you see, and at the same time, if we can get rid of Islamic Republic there, and if we can sort of bring our forces together to do that, then the world, I think, in the West is going to be a better and safer world too. Not only from terrorism that makes all of us scared, but you see, I don't know how much in Sweden that's happened. I live in England, and I know about US. These two societies, England and US at least, I can say, and I've heard about Germany too, so I'm thinking Sweden more or less probably is affected too, has become more suppressive societies. All your emails are controlled, all your telephone calls are controlled, your money transactions are controlled. You have no private life in England. And in England now, they can take you under the Terrorism Act, keep you for maybe 48 days, I think, or was it 24? They were changing it, but doesn't matter. Even if it's 24 days, it's a lot, without charging you. And they can use all means, they don't call it torture, but all means to try to get information from you, and they can then either have to free you or charge you after 24 days. So it's affected, even us, not necessarily us as me being from Middle East, but even if you have no connection with the Middle East, and even if you're not internationalist, and if you don't really care about what's happening there, but what's happening there affects your life here. So even from this pragmatic point of view, you have to care about what's happening there. because your life here is being affected, especially since September 11th. September 11th showed in another way how globalistic the world has become. Someone could get up, decide in mountains of Afghanistan to bomb something in New York, and by bombing that in New York, change the whole world scenery. They're talking about World War III. Bush is talking about it. It might not be very sort of plausible, might not happen, but the fact that we're talking about it is scary, isn't it? And you know, if there is a World War III, it's not going to be even like World War II. Well, now we're talking about atomic powers. You've seen one scene in World War II in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, what atomic bomb can do. US showed us what atomic bomb can do, and just imagine now all these crazy people have their hands on atomic bomb. Pakistan, India, Israel, Iran is getting its hands on it. And now they talk walking around with laptop bombs, nukes, to get to different countries. So you might even find the drug dealers in Colombia have it. It's just, I don't know if you've seen Dr. Strangelove. It's a very old comedy by Peter Sellers. It was from the 60s. And showed a little bit of what the world can really become. There, it was just farce. It was, really comedy, but we're seeing it now. It's not that comic anymore. And this is what could happen. So then you can, all I'm trying to say to you here, that how all these things are connected. How fight for women's liberation, fight for women's equality, fight for women's freedom in Iran is connected to the war against Islamism, to the war against what America is doing, to what's happening in Gaza, what's happening with Israel, what's happening with peace process, what's happening in England. You can't avoid it. The world has really, not only economically become so global, politically, socially, even culture is becoming political. And I'll just say one more thing and end it, because I like to have a discussion. I think that we can get more coming out of it. Just this morning, leaving my friend's house, I checked the internet. There's a new party being established in Europe. The right in France, Austria, one more country, I don't remember now, they have come together to make a right-wing party against Islamization of Europe, fighting for the identity of Europe against immigrants. If we are not careful, if we do not start fight against it from its inception, from its being made, we're going to be in big trouble. We've seen the rise of right wings in Denmark. We've seen the rise of right wings in France. If you remember, last presidential election, it was Le Pen, the leader of the fascist party, in the second round with Jacques Chirac. Even the communists voted for Jacques Chirac because they were so scared of Le Pen winning. We've seen the rise of right wings and fascist parties in the ex-Soviet blocs, in all the Eastern European countries, in Russia, in Ukraine, in Poland, in the previous East Germany. We've seen it, I don't know, I don't dare to talk about Sweden with you being here and so much more informed. So I just talk about the countries that I've read about. So we have to fight against this party from its inception. We have to stand against it, because if they manage, because they are very demagogic, they can come with anti-immigration rhetoric, talk about how immigrants are not only taking our jobs, making us poor, they're also bringing honor killings, they're changing our identities, They're building mosques instead of churches, and just on, with this racist and fascist rhetoric. And one day we see another Nazi party recruiting in our neighborhood. We might think, okay, this is against Islam. I hate Islam too, so it doesn't matter. We might think it's against immigrants. I'm not an immigrant. It's okay. I mean, there are too many immigrants. I know you don't think that way, but many people might think that way. So I'm telling you, you have to talk to them. Oh, it's immigrants. I mean, there are too many of them anyway. And look at them, how they look. Culturally, they don't match with us. So. And then this party gets stronger and stronger, and we'll see in a couple of years. They're recruiting from university students. They're recruiting in our factories. They're recruiting in our streets. They're recruiting our neighborhood and building up another Nazi party. That time was against the Jews. This time is against Muslims. That time was against homosexuals. They might be a bit nicer to homosexuals now. That time was against communists. This time again is going to be against communists. Only the Jews, maybe, will be replaced by Muslims. Anti-Semitism will give place to anti-Muslims. So this party is, to my opinion, is an alarm. Is a wake-up call. We cannot not do anything anymore. If we want a better world, we cannot just think about Gothenburg or about Sweden. We have to go further. And I don't mean charity-wise to go further, politically to go further, socially go further. We have to support the movement of students in Iran, women in Iran, workers in Iran. We have to support the movement of those people fighting in Iraq against both Islamism and against America and against the government there. We have to come and protest against all the suppression they're bringing here. We have to do it all. All. In a way, maybe we need to have another 70s, but socially and politically totally different. I don't mean the same movement. I don't mean that at all. A different kind of movement, a more global movement. Really, I said one thing, and this thing, and I'm going to finish, is we see a very, very vibrant, strong movement against globalization. We have this anti-globalization movement. What they do, I mean, some of their demands is very, very good. They want to just de-globalize the economy. You can't do that. You can't do that. This is not the answer. We have to concentrate politically. We have to concentrate politically and look at the world now. What is US doing? What is Britain doing? What is EU doing? What is Islamism is doing? See these, stand against them, fight for secularism, fight for equality, for better life, for justice, fight against what US is doing, against the war. But you don't need to fight against the war and against America and support Islamists. You don't. You can fight against both, and you have to fight against both. You see, it's maybe at the beginning it looks a bit difficult, but once the question is solved, it seems so much easier, and you feel so much more at ease to come out, protest, and support because it's closer to you. About a couple of months ago, I have a daughter, she's a university student. Her friend came home and we were sitting discussing, and she knew about me, how I'm sort of fighting for women's liberation against Islam and all sorts of things. And she told me, I have this very good friend, she's left, she's part of one of these left parties in England, maybe Workers' Socialist Party, I don't know, and they're very Islamist too. And she's also a lesbian. And she has this big poster on his wall saying, we are all Hezbollah now. And I said, my God, what is the world is coming to? She has 3 good reasons to hate Hezbollah. One, she's a woman. As a woman, if you haven't lost your mind, if you haven't been brainwashed, you're going to hate any Islamist movement. They don't even think of you as a human being. You're not even half citizen. You're not even half human being. How could you? How could you be a woman in your right mind and support Islamists? This is crazy. Second, she's a lesbian. If she lived in Iran, she would have been executed now. She would have been hanged. Islamists hangs homosexuals. And she's a left. How could anyone who thinks has anything to do with socialism support a Muslim Islamic movement? They hate socialists. You know how many communists and socialists have been murdered by this regime and any other Islamic movement in the Middle East? Only in Iran, thousands of communists and socialists have been killed. They're so enemies. And we have this lesbian woman who thinks she's a socialist, she has a poster of all Hezbollah, then there's something wrong with this world. And we have to put that wrong right. We have to find out politically and ideologically what we have to do, as we have very different opinions of course. But that political and ideological part we share, we should come together. So what I want to ask you here now, go back to my subject, to support us. To support us in our fight for women's liberation and equality. To support us to build a better world in Iran. This is our concentration, but we are fighting here too. To support us when we ask you to support us to free students, to free women from jail, to support us for our fight for secularism, to support us for our fight against Islamic Republic, and to support us to fight against the other pole of terrorism, which might attack Iran. Nobody knows. So I'd like to ask for your support. Any kind of support you can give us, and that's going to make us all, as the force for a better world, strong. Thank you so much.
Tack så mycket. Kanske ni har frågor, gärna ni kan ställa frågor. Antingen på engelska eller svenska så att jag kan översätta på persiska. Men jag är inte så bra på engelska. I alla fall, den här boken, senaste boken, artiklar om politisk islam och women's rättigheter, alltså kvinnorättigheter, som alltså, det är mycket komplex och det hänger av väldigt mycket variabler. Alltså man kan inte säga att jag bara kämpar för kvinnorättigheter. Alltså, i det här globala världen och komplexa världen, det är mycket saker som man ska ta hänsyn. Den här boken finns i vår informationsbok, En trappa ut, och dessutom det finns en gratis engelsk tidning som heter Women's Liberation där ni kan plocka. Om ni har frågor gärna kan ställa frågor.
Any questions, any discussions, any comments? I saw you two looking and smiling. What do you think? Do you see that relevant, what I was trying to say?
Yeah, definitely. It's amazing. I love this page, and it hits right here.
Are you part of any movement or any organization?
No, but we're studying development at the university here, so it just feels very relevant. This development and women's rights are just so linked together.
Yeah, exactly. But development is a lot about women too. But they most go into economics, don't they?
Yeah.
At the universities, when they study developments, they go more into economics, how you can make banks which give loans to women. Well, they're important, but they're like aspirin giving to migraine kind of a thing. You know, you can't treat migraine headache with an aspirin. But this is what they do, to my opinion. I'm not saying you shouldn't do it, but at least to have aspirin is better than nothing. But there's more is involved. Yes. Yeah. Show that's more than yes.
Yeah, I totally agree with you what you said that today's if you're like against political Islam, If you're against imperialism, it's easy to choose political Islam, and that you need a third way. But the left and the labor movement has always been like a big guarantee to have like a good imperialist strategy. But today, in a lot of the Middle East countries, you can see that the labor movement is very weak, and that's maybe one of the key factors that the political Islam can grow. And also, of course, the new wave of imperialism. But I think your organization has a big responsibility to develop a strategy to like advocate to the labor movement to like impose your good thinking in the labor movement. Because as you said, in some parts of the labor movement, they have developed a sort of thinking about my enemy's enemy is my friend, and that's quite horrible, I think.
Yeah.
So it's good with organizations that can stand for something good, you know. And so I think it's good if you can go out to the labor movement and like.
Yeah, it would be great if you can. That's the problem. You see, your observation is correct that labor movement is weak in the Middle East, but it hasn't become weak now. It's always been weak. You know why? Because we've always had dictatorships. Always in that part of the world, you had dictatorships that have been supported by the West. So that's why when nationalism is defeated, like in Arab countries, you see, for a long time, there was Arab nationalism standing against Israel, for example. It was defeated, couldn't get anywhere. So since the societies are such under dictatorship that no left movement, no secular movement, no radical movement, no humanist movement can flourish, they're sort of killed in the butt. You know how many of them are in prisons. So what happens? Islamism becomes another option. That's exactly what happened in Iran at the time of revolution. You see, at the time of the Shah, there was some left movements. Not very strong, but there were especially youth getting involved. And it's a whole, that kind of anti-imperialist movement, which our branch, I mean, our trend of left and communism is very different, what we call worker communism. And at the time of revolution, left became a viable option. It was almost, because people liked the left. They liked all these people who fought for freedom. But what happened? They were weak. They were ideologically weak. They were politically weak. They were socially weak. And Khomeini came to power. We did not bring Khomeini to power. Guadeloupe Conference brought Khomeini to our front door because of the fear of the left, because still was Soviet Union to our neighbors, so that was they needed Islam. How political Islam became strong? America, Afghanistan. After the coup d'etat of pro-Soviet Union coup d'etat in Afghanistan, they started building mujahideen. They gave them arms, they gave them money, they helped them strategically. All the strategic big think tanks were in Afghanistan, on the mountains, building mujahideen. And Khomeini was brought to power there. They built, they fit, like a little child, America raised political Islam. It just sounds like some Bible stories. I mean, it was a child, and now the child is fighting the father, kind of a thing. But exactly that's what's happened. Political Islam was not the product of people's demands, people's aspiration in those countries. Was built, was fed, was financed, was armed by the West, especially by the US, and now it's tearing people apart. And US supposedly is fighting against. So that's why labor movement is weak. Labor movement doesn't even have a free organization. In Iran, we do not have, labor movement, the working class in Iran does not have the right to organize. You know, now, there are many more labor activists in the jail in Iran, but two famous ones are in jail. One of them is called Mansour Osanlu. He's a labor of the bus workers union, and he's not even radical. He's just a reformist, syndicalist, trade unionist, laborist. He's not even like left in that sense of the word. He's in jail. They cut his tongue. And Mahmoud Saleh. For the 7, 8 years, this poor man has been in and out of jail. Constantly. He only lives with one liver, and that one's partly damaged. So, I mean, he doesn't have even long to live. This is what labor movement is. Even in Iran, with the whole different balance of power, with the left being strong, this is what's happening to labor movement. In Egypt, in Iraq, in Lebanon, when you look at all of that, there isn't any hope. So I agree with you. We have to build that labor movement with a more radical point of view of seeing both enemies, but our fight is a difficult one. We need support, we need money, we need people, we need cadres, we've been doing that. We have been doing that for the past 30 years. But it takes much more, and that's why I'm asking for your support, for anything you can do, because without that international support, from that the real decent humanity in the West, it would be difficult to do it. Anymore.
Får jag fråga en sak?
You can speak Swedish and Karin can translate for me. Maybe it's that easy.
Det som händer alltså efter de senaste 10-15 åren som jag har sett där, alltså västvärlden som har böjt sig fram i samband med det terroristupprörande hela världen som på något sätt USA skapar ju det. Västvärlden har böjt sig för den islamska påtryckningen på något sätt. Och den här gör ju egentligen, den här kvinnofrågan är något annat som bit för bit. De har ju förtryck eller förtryckta. Man ser här i samhället Sverige, alltså det böjer sig mer och mer på den religiösa akten som pågår ju här. Med liggande och moskéer, massa grejer som händer ju här. Och den gör ju att jag anser hela den här kvinnofrågan på något sätt som förtrycker mer både i Mellanöstern och här i Sverige. Hur har ni, eller hur anser ni det här ska gå tillväga? Eller hur ska man få slut på det?
Jag ska översätta på persiska, jag kan inte engelska. میگه مثلا توی اروپا هم ما می‌بینیم که مثل کشورهای اروپایی در مقابل اسلام سیاسی کوتاه میاد و عملاً این باعث شده که حقوق زنان تو همین دوام هم زیر ضرب بره. این که چرا کشورهای اروپایی در مقابل اسلام سیاسی کوتاه میاد